talking a lot about the need for it. So what's actually been done? Last year, actually, I had an intern working with me who tried to do some research and dig up, what were the frameworks, existing frameworks for South-South cooperation. And it was very hard to find anything, I have to say. And so I don't have a lot to share with you today, but I think that in itself is useful. So what exists so far that we could find are case studies and case stories. There are several that were produced by the task team on South-South cooperation. There's also something called Sharing Innovative Experiences, which comes out of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation. There's also several progress and implementation reports on different South-South cooperation projects. There's one, for example, from the World Bank, South-South, I'm sure I should have spelled out the acronym, South-South EEF. Yes. The World Bank facility on a World Bank fund for South-South cooperation initiatives. There is also self-assessments of agency contributions to SSC. UNDP did something, I think, in 2011 to evaluate its own effectiveness in supporting South-South cooperation against its own indicators for itself as an organization. There's also a lot of what I found to be overly complicated frameworks that look to combine evaluating South-South cooperation with impact evaluation. Rather difficult to understand. And a lot of recommendations are out there for better monitoring and evaluation of SSC. So I picked out three frameworks that I thought might be useful for us around our discussion. One is the World Bank Institute, WBI, has a document called the Art of Knowledge Exchange 2, indicating that there was Art of Knowledge Exchange 1. So 2 has come out recently, I think just in the last 6 months or so. And it's a very user-friendly planning guide for anyone who wishes to design, implement, and measure a results-oriented knowledge exchange initiative. It's primarily focused on knowledge exchange, capacity building, but it contains a very useful toolbox, and it's a very easy-to-use manual. So it's got dedicated sections on measuring and reporting results. It has many sort of case studies of South-South knowledge exchange. So there's a number of examples in there of like India and Tanzania and different examples of actual South-South cooperation programs. And it has indicators and assessment criteria for things like study tours, conferences, communities of practice, expert visits, different forms of technical cooperation. So when I was looking through it, I found for a lot of the types of activities that we are engaged in as organizations, it's a useful package, it's a useful toolkit. KSP, Korea's Knowledge Sharing Program, is a very well-known program. It's around sharing Korea's development experience and expertise through multilateral and bilateral policy consultation and what Korea calls its modularization of Korea's experience. So when Korea, even before Busan became a model of development for many countries, what they decided to do was package their experience into a number of modules that then could be that other countries could learn from, and this is how they share knowledge, is according to modules. So the knowledge KSP doesn't lay out a clear evaluation framework, but it does draw again on some joint work that they've done with the World Bank Institute to provide guidance on assessing capacity development initiatives. I was actually quite surprised that they talk about in most of their documentation about the different stages of knowledge sharing, and the fourth stage is evaluation, but they don't actually present a clear framework for doing so. Also, KSP, they recently convened a conference on developing an evaluation system for the knowledge sharing program. It was out of that I found some very complicated, actually, frameworks that I don't find were very user-friendly. Okay, so a third one that I came across was by the FAO. And this is a monitoring and an evaluation toolkit for South-South cooperation projects that came out in 2011. And it seems like the FAO has actually been working on South-South cooperation for some time. and they had some case studies and then came out with this toolkit that is mostly applicable to food security type projects, but I found was also quite user-friendly and could be quite useful for other types of South-South cooperation initiatives. So in their toolkit, they present a logical framework for assessing results in 3 areas. So individual capacity, organizational capacity, and the enabling environment. So there are 3 areas when you have some kind of initiative that are very important to assess. Also to design. So how you have to design around looking at individuals, organizations, but as well as around the political, economic, contextual environment for any kind of initiative. So they have indicators for those. But as I said, it is mostly geared to food security. So I think it was designed for FAO offices and others to have been able to assess, to plan and assess their initiatives. So some bigger questions around that, even though we can refer to those examples and others, is how have South-South cooperation partners assessed progress and impact to date? So, I'd be curious to know for countries like India and Malaysia and Thailand who have been doing these types of initiatives for years, how has satisfaction been measured? If it was around mutual benefit, or if it was about being very responsive to the demands of a partner country, was that in itself enough? And how will better or different tools improve the quality of South-South cooperation? And lastly, what are we measuring? So, should outcomes be linked to the post-2015 development goals? I think a lot of the discussion in Mexico might be around that. How can we capture what has happened in the whole sphere of South-South cooperation and feed it into some kind of discussion around results around post-2015? And how do you measure mutual benefit? Which I think is a big question. The other thing for me, that's all I have to present, but I think we're evaluating, when we're talking about monitoring and evaluation for South-South cooperation, we're talking about 2 different things. I mean, on the one hand, it's how does South-South cooperation contribute to overall development effectiveness or development cooperation, which I think is much of the discussion, as Tom said, that people want to try to capture in Mexico. But the other is how do countries bilaterally measure the effectiveness of South-South cooperation? Because it is mostly a bilateral endeavor. Thailand is working with Laos. There is a relationship of mutual benefit. So how are you measuring South-South cooperation at that level? So I think there's 2 levels, which probably, they're 2 very different things that we're measuring there. And the indicators for that are probably different. So I think we probably need to consider that when we're talking about it. That's my introduction.
Thank you, Antia. I think the third question is very important. What are we measuring and how we measure? I discussed with Ajahn Pakum a little bit. I will switch the presentation from Ajahn Pakum to me because my presentation, not presentation, but my question will continue asking the question about measure, the indicators that we will, if we would like to measure, how we do it. And then Ajahn Pakum will come up with the facilitation if we are going to do the monitoring and also evaluation. Okay, I think the key question that we have to keep in mind, for this afternoon session and maybe in the future is monitoring and evaluation actually is not the same thing, but it's related. And the key thing is that what do we want to monitor and how do we monitor? So we need one set of indicators and data in order to monitor something. Again, evaluation. We also have to ask the same question, what do we want to evaluate and how do we evaluate it? The difference between monitoring and evaluation is that monitoring is the continuing function. So it means if we collect the data must be collected continuously and systematically. If not, the data will not be reliable enough. So we need the indicator that support us to correct the data and what kind of data we are going to correct. Not all data that we are going to correct, particularly when we face the problems, the situation that the Southern providers actually are diverse, we are different. So there must be the agreed set of indicator, agreed set of data that we are going to correct and the system that we are going to correct. And this is the monitor. Actually, this is the question that I would like to push to Sachin. When you say that monitor should be the obligation, not the obligation, but the duty of the state only. But I also question whether it should be the role of civil society or private sector also to do the monitor. This is the big question also because to do the data collection to some extent, I think is touched upon the national interest. What kind of data we are going to share with other countries? So I think this is very important. But for me, monitor is the basic step, the minimum step that we can do together. But of course, we have to design this very, very clear. The evaluation. Evaluation, actually, this is the systematic and objective assessment of ongoing or completed project. But I mean, when we talk about evaluation, actually we look at the output and outcome in long term. So when we talk about evaluation can have its own indicator which is separate from monitor, but it would be better if we can apply the indicator from monitoring session, because when we do the monitor we will have one set of data, but that data will show us just only the continuous process. Sometimes that data cannot show us the result, I mean the output and the outcome at the end. So evaluation needs another set of indicators. But I mean, at the beginning, if we can develop the monitoring system, then later we can do the evaluation. It's, so difficult to jump to evaluation. Many people talk about evaluation and would like to see the impact of South or Southern providers. I just wonder how come to do the evaluation without the monitoring system at the beginning. Then we go to the indicators. So, and we go this one, indicator. Indicators for us means how to measure it. So there are several ways to measure it. First, quantitative. Actually, this is the basic, simple, but I think the most difficult one to be applying for Southern providers, particularly because we are different, we are diverse. There are several types of aid process, fragmentation, and other things. But if we would like to show the continuity and also the impact, quantitative metric is important because this is the thing that is easily countable and also, visible. So in order to say that there is impact on this kind of thing, this process is good or not, quantitative metric is important. But how we decide quantitative metric, this is the problem. Second one, maybe this is easier. We measure by performance. When we measure by performance, actually we look at the effectiveness or efficiency. And effectiveness and efficiency can be measured by the output of the operation. So for example, one program or one project is set with clear objectives and also expected output. When we measure performance, it can be done clearly. I mean, if whether the project achieved the objective or not. So this indicator, the performance, is easier to be applied, particularly with the southern providers. The next is achievement. Actually, the achievement, this indicator is related to performance. Performance, actually, we focus on the process of working, the process of project implementation. Achievement, we look at the end result, the output or the outcome of the project. It is assumed that if the performance is good, it should achieve the output and outcome of the project, but sometimes it's not. So that's why we need these two indicators, the performance and also the achievement. Accountability. This is also very important for, particularly for the southern providers, because many countries provide assistance, but this is also the case that southern providers are criticized by the northern providers because of, I would say because of the lack of information instead of unaccountability. But of course we need the indicators to show that our process is also transparent and accountable. Because the concept of accountability and the indicators in order to show that accountability is still very, it's very difficult to make, to draft, to set up the indicators. It's almost the same as the quantitative metric because the concept is not yet clear. For some country, this issue is transparent. This issue is not sensitive, so we can, share the information. But for some countries, we will not share it because this is sensitive. So the sensitivity, the degree of sensitivity of each country is vary. So when it's vary, it's very difficult to develop the indicators for accountability. For Asian providers, if we are going to do M&E, actually my question is that we would like to do both, or we would like to do just only half at the beginning. And I'm not ambitious. I prefer to do half, actually, if possible. This is also from academic point of view. It's interesting to do the monitoring, actually, and develop some indicators for monitoring first, because so far we don't know much about the southern providers. But if we are ambitious enough, okay, we can go, for both parts. At the same time, I'm not sure whether, I discussed with Ajahn Papu whether we can do all these indicators at the same time. So maybe we can select some at the beginning and then try to develop and try to, study it, make it, and apply it with the case that we have now. That's why I put the question mark. Should we go for quantitative metrics? Or we go for performance or achievement or accountability. So this is just my idea and throw to all of you, and then we can discuss later. That's all. I go to Ajahn Papu because Ajahn Papu also think about the network, which we think that network can be something like the facility for, if we are going to develop M&E, maybe network can help for that. Okay, Ajahn Papu.
Thank you, Ajahn Siripong. I think this afternoon session and actually the purpose of this workshop is first to talk about how we build up the network, and I agree with many people proposing that for South-South cooperation we should have some indicators which might be different from indicators that people use to measure the effectiveness of a program of North-South cooperation. But talking about indicators is quite a long story. I mean, I don't think we can come up with a set of indicators. Just a few of us in this room talking about indicators. But first thing that I want that we have to talk about is how to create the facility the facility that can facilitate the creation of the indicators. So I think that should come first actually. So I put the title here, building up the network. So my question is for this workshop is that if we want to have a network, what should be the main objectives of the network? And I want you to discuss, this topic in a very detail as well. Should the network be serving as should the network be serving as a knowledge sharing facility, or should it be the resource center? Or what are the functions that you can think about, when we talk about the network? Type of the network is also important. Who should be included as a member of the network? When we talk about building up the indicators, should we only include academicians or think tanks, or should government agencies, people from other government agencies be included in the network, in the discussion, in the brainstorming of creating set of indicators as well? That is what we have to think about. The network, should the network have a hub of the network? For example, the coordinating unit, which is necessary to run the network. Or it should be like some people volunteer to be the coordinator of the network. To coordinate people in the network, to come together, sit together and talk about indicators, something like that. Or we can have a network which is characterized by the rotation system. If we have a network with Indian think tank, Malaysian think tank, or Indonesian think tank working on the issues of creation of indicators for effectiveness for South-South cooperation, maybe we can, rotate the role of coordinators. Something like that. So how about activities? When we talk about the network, we should have some activities in our mind, and should we just monitor the progress, or should we evaluate the impact or the outcome or impact of the program of South-South cooperation? And of course, constructing indicators to measure the progress of South-South cooperation is the main objective of everyone here. Should we have the collaborative research? Right, collaborative research may provide some good evidence on the success or failure of the program. So collaborative may be one of the activities, but we have to think about how to do the collaborative research as well. Of course, forum or workshop is very necessary for people to exchange the idea. So this one is proposed as the activity as well. And the last thing that we have to talk about, which is, I think this is a very important issue, is source of finance. We are very ambitious, everyone in this room. We want to have a network that we can share information. We can share information. We go beyond that. We want to do the big things, like we want to come up with indicators, set of indicators that measure effectiveness of a program of South-South cooperation. So this is very big task actually, and I don't know how long we are going to take from now until we come up with a very good indicators to measure South-South cooperation effectiveness of South-South cooperation programs. It needs some support from the government or from somewhere else. That is what we have to think about. And I want to just throw these issues into our discussion today. And I think we have to start from how to build up the network first. And when we talk about South-South cooperation, we are here, everyone, we cannot represent the South-South cooperation as a whole, right? Southern providers as a whole. Dr. Sachin is from India, some people from Thailand, from Malaysia, from Indonesia, but still, we are not from, to what extent we can represent people from China, from all the Asian providers, all the Southern providers. That is what we have to think about. And the next step, should we include more partners? From Southern providers, Southern countries, provider countries as well. That is what we have to talk about in this afternoon session. Thank you. I want to throw this to the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Ajahn Pakum. It seems that we throw a lot of questions to all of you, and now we would like to hear the ideas and comments. Particularly as Ajahn Pakum and Antia point out, I think we need a space to share the information. If we have the network, can the network do that function? To be a resource center, to be, the space that countries can share. What organization will be our partner in the network, and next step, how can we do it? What we would like to do, the monitor or the evaluation, or the graph activities that we would like to see. So now the floor is open for everybody. Yes, please.
I'm sorry to take the first chance to speak, but I have to leave, and I just wanted to make a couple of comments, and both on the network side and the issue of where to look to develop indicators. And to start with the latter, we've done some work with Taika and also with Bappenas and the government of Indonesia to look at monitoring and evaluation systems for South-South cooperation and what kind of data is already there. And I think the first issue we need to address here is that there are multiple institutions engaged in the agenda with very different ideas of what results are trying to be achieved. And so a common results framework from the perspective of Indonesia and Thailand as well seems like quite a challenge, because there are multiple measures of performance which quite rightly different institutions are trying to embed in their South-South cooperation in the same government. Nonetheless, there are just two really rather simple areas where I think we found from the data sets it was particularly challenging to put together a story around results, and that's of course what we want indicators for. And the first was just at the country level. So with multiple institutions across government engaged in the same country, let's say from country X to country Y, ministries of agriculture, ministries of education, ministries of health, multiple actors engaged in delivering South-South cooperation. There was no overarching results framework for South-South cooperation in country Y. And maybe that's an area where it's important to look to indicators to establish a story around South-South cooperation between two countries, because that is lacking at the moment. And the second is sectors, because you can get aggregate data around sector engagements, but to go to subsectors and to go to the areas within those subsectors that countries are specializing in their South-South cooperation is difficult from the data set. So maybe indicators around more specificity at the sector level. And finally, again on the network side, just to reiterate that from a global perspective, UNDP is really committed to trying to support this network grow and take forward this work around indicators and working with Asia Foundation and others in different regions to make that happen.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Kun Kim.
I'll preface my remarks by saying that I'm far from a specialist in this area, but just a couple of thoughts related not to the network, but more particularly to the evaluation. And one is, I guess, for the reasons that Thomas just alluded to, at country level, let alone across multiple countries, there's many, many different layers. And so for a network or for anybody that wants to take this on, how big a bite does one want to take off in the first instance? It would seem to me that there's a nice opportunity for some sort of models or some proof of concept approaches where you agree in the context of one particular body of work, you'll try something different by way of M&E or monitoring separately and evaluation separately. So that's one. The other one relates to the issue of the baseline, and it would seem to me that you have a choice if you sort of approach this task as something that's unique to SSC, then to what extent you feel bound in any way to take account of conventional DAC M&E frameworks. On one hand, you could set up something by way of comparison. You could just say, no, this is something completely different that's going to march according to its own sort of lights and keep the two separate. But it does seem to me that it would be interesting at least to reflect on the possibility of comparing the two approaches and if it looks different. And then the third point is just in terms of what the recipients of South-South cooperation want. Often you hear, we hear and everybody hears from our own recipients of support about the burden of M&E and the extent to which recipients are tasked with the role in this exercise. And I think it's an important conversation to have with them, that if this is going to be something different in the context of SSC, then what is the role and the voice of the recipients as well too in executing this?
Thank you, Carl. It's very, very interesting, very important, yeah, comparative perspective and also recipient perspective. Yes. Any more comments, things for the evaluation indicate? So we go to Antia first, and then, or yeah, and then Priyanto.
Just thinking out loud a little bit, I think, what a lot of countries now are doing, I mean, the discussion around evaluating the effectiveness of South-South cooperation, a lot of countries haven't done it because of the, South-South cooperation has gone on for a long, long time, but we haven't actually analyzed it in the same way that traditional development projects have been analyzed. So why hasn't that happened, or has it happened but in a different way? So I think trying to suddenly, I'm a little worried about trying to create a sort of a big net, start with a network and start with a kind of imposing framework. I think you definitely have to get buy-in and political ownership of doing the evaluation. And the fact that it hasn't necessarily been done for a long, long time, I mean, that could raise some issues that maybe some governments are not comfortable with. Sachin just did an evaluation of India's South-South cooperation with Nepal through small projects, which maybe that was the first time, and you don't want the country to, you don't want 50 years of experience to show that there weren't any results. So I think we have to tread somewhat carefully, which is why in some ways I think a small scale approach might work best. Like, pick some programs, or some countries can come forward and say we're willing to test some different kinds of indicators or methodologies to evaluate our experience. So, Thailand might say we want to look at a portfolio of programs or experiences with Cambodia over 5 years, and let's test drive some of these different frameworks that are out there to see what it looks like and what the results throw up. Because ultimately, I think where you want to go with this is you want to have a better planning framework for South-South cooperation as well, right? So you can look retrospectively at South-South cooperation that's already occurred and throw up some lessons, and then hopefully that will lead to a more holistic framework, not just for monitoring and evaluation, but for conceptualization, planning, design, implementation through to monitoring and evaluation. So what I'm trying to say, I think, is that a network, I think, is very good, but I wouldn't want it to precede the buy-in for actually doing the evaluation or doing the monitoring, and that ownership that has to come first.
Yeah. We go to Priyanto.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to share Indonesia experience on the monitoring and evaluation. And we start shifting from output result to output to result starting from 2005. So at the time we are aligned all of the how to monitor the activities, development activities into the result base. So then we also request all of the line ministry to come up with indicators. Of course we also launch some regulation to support that. But eventually, we are in the central government feel that they came up with a lot of indicators, which is makes us difficult to let's say to assess how they can achieve the output even for the result. So that's why for time being we review how we can maybe we can set up the indicators is in more simple, so it's more workable, more doable. So even for South-South cooperation activities now, we still don't have any indicators for that, but as a central government, Bappenas also already set up some, let's say, scope for guiding the line ministry to let's say put all of those factors in this scope of works into when they formulate the indicators. So that's actually what we are doing now, and we will not come up with a very sophisticated or very complicated method, because we have around 80 line ministries, and with around more than 400 budget documents, and each budget document has many indicators, many sub-activities. So you can imagine that is because also central government do not have enough staff to look at one by one. So that's why putting more simple of indicators is very important for us. So regarding the network, particularly for the South-South cooperation, actually we still work on that, and we also have support from German to let's say to how to establish the global networks. What Mr. Pak also mentioned that for the networking researcher, this is also will be included on that kind of mechanism. And the knowledge sharing itself, I think our bosses also will bring this to the Mexico Forum for the knowledge sharing. Actually, we are take a lead for this one, but I think still a lot of homework to be done in a couple of weeks before the Mexico meeting.
Yes, Sachin.
Thank you, Sripal. I think there are a couple of issues that we need to get right before we get onto this exercise of indicators and methodologies. Number one is not to see a disconnect, though we had a lunch hour in between, but what we discussed in the previous session and what we are discussing now is a huge and very intense connection between the two topics, and that is the backdrop for South-South cooperation. There is a wide prevalent feeling in the South, and particularly in the governments, that there is excessive focus on South-South cooperation. So there is an unease in the government to talk more about it. They are apprehensive why international agencies, northern NGOs are talking so much about South-South cooperation. What is it that they want from South-South cooperation? So there is an unease in the system, particularly from the demands that are coming out from specific actors saying that post-2015 means new commitments and new resource demands. So Southern government, South-South cooperation should bring up more resources. Hence, monitoring and evaluation of South-South cooperation. So this backdrop is extremely important for us to keep in mind before we launch onto this exercise. That's point number one, and I would be very clear and strong in that. And that's why I would like to say that there is difference between M&E and E&IA. So monitoring and evaluation and impact assessment. So we need to understand the distinction between the two. As soon as you say monitoring, the question comes up: who, where, how, when. Those kind of questions come up. And our experience with multilateral agencies, particularly like the WTO, UNCTAD, WIPO, is such that developing countries have not been well prepared and well articulative when it comes to multilateral negotiations. As a result, they get sucked up in the ongoing dynamics and lose out on the ideas and objectives that their formulations have. It is only post 2013 Cancun onwards, maybe Doha onwards, that in WTO developing countries together could articulate and give break to break when the response had to come from the South. But in other forums like G20, things have not been very easy. We have been fighting, but haven't been succeeded in any major change, I would say. So more homework has to be done. So when we use the word monitoring, I think we are borrowing the expression from somebody else. It's not our own idea. So monitoring for whom? That question hangs on our mind. And that's why I would say that our objective is that South-South cooperation is happening. Can we do something about its evaluation? And for evaluation, can we have a methodology which is different from log frame approach, what DFID and USID are using? Can we have certain methodology? Can we really have indicators which help us feed in our idea of impact assessment to the partner country? So, where to make a beginning? And I go by the efforts that we see and Anthea listed in her slides. And I think there is a sense in taking the evidence from the ground rather than top-down approach. So when you go for an approach which is capturing head numbers, which is capturing broad headings, it is not the right approach when you want to experience and feel the impact of South-South cooperation. South-South cooperation is a bilateral phenomenon grounded at real ground level. So that has to be appreciated. So what is happening at the sectoral and sub-sectoral level, and that's where I differ, and unfortunately Tom has left, but that's where I differ from him. We can capture South-South cooperation far more in a robust manner and far more intensely when we go at the sector and sub-sectoral level. Thailand's cooperation with Cambodia and Laos in the agriculture sector is far more clear than the overall development cooperation expenditure of Thailand. And I would say that it may be a longer route for us to get a full picture, but let us start from small steps. Small steps would come from sectoral experience only. And sectoral experiences are in terms of India's support to Indonesia for local government administration across various islands. How local administration, the Panchayati Raj system, is really helping Indonesia. So that knowledge sharing helps. There is an expenditure associated with it. There is capacity building element associated with it. There is automation of your local institutions which India has supported. So there is an n number of steps which are associated with that one narrow program, which can be quantified, which can be clearly categorized. So we need to capture that and start from that disaggregated level. Third and last point is that there is already development. We have been saying that there is need of a network, and this network now is taking shape. There was discussion in Beijing about this. There was discussion about it in Delhi 1 year back. Now the idea is that a group of think tanks would come together in Mexico. On 14th of April in the evening, we have kept a small informal meeting. We are tentatively calling it something like NEST, Network of Southern Think Tanks. And this NEST is trying to see where to make a beginning. And again, Siripon, there I go by your suggestion in terms of regional efforts. I think the global network might be there, but I think Asian efforts and Asian think tanks should work together, and Latin American think tanks should work at their level, the African think tanks at their level, and then we can meet at specific points of time. But Asia Foundation would do a great service, Anthea, and this goes to you, to play that pivot in the region, in the Asian region, say for next 2 years in the work program, to develop Asia specific program and indicators. In our dialogue that was there for 2 or 3 years, it has come out very clearly, and Siripon had presented it in 2 of our meetings, what came out of that dialogue. There are certain specific intrinsic Asian values which characterize. So South-South cooperation of Asian countries may be different from African southern countries, may be different from Latin American southern countries. So we need to take that regional specificity in mind. So let us, these think tanks, and I think it would also save resources. There's no point in having global jamborees to think where we just can't discuss.
Thank you, Sachin. Yes, and here.
Sorry, I'm interjecting again because we're having a discussion, right? I agree with you that we should start at a very local level. I would caution a little bit about overly emphasizing on sectors, because as you know, a lot of South-South cooperation is not sectorally driven. It's very demand driven. So often it's India might not choose to work in agriculture with X country. They will respond to whatever the demands are of a particular partner government. So you might have programs in all kinds of sectors. It's definitely a trend in terms of infrastructure, let's say, in some of South-South cooperation. But there's different things that you're measuring as well, right? So I think it's worth taking a few partnerships and starting, with those. Look at, Thailand could pick a few of its key South-South cooperation partnerships and evaluating them against a number of different criteria, right? And so to see, well, maybe there was positive outcomes sectorally in whatever sector it was, but maybe there was, very positive outcomes in terms of partnership, sustained partnership, which is also very important in terms of South-South cooperation. You're building your relationship with the country for long term, even though maybe the precise development outcome was not as it was anticipated. So you're measuring a number of different things, and that's why I think the regional specificity is also important when you say there is an Asian approach. Asian values towards South-South cooperation and the reason for the relationships might be different from what they are in other regions. So it's worth kind of picking a few partnerships and examining those.
Because Anthea, idea really is to eventually capture the universe.
Yeah.
Universe of development cooperation engagement of a particular country. So what we can do is, and the research teams at the country level, like here, the team led by Sinicon in Thailand, may study only Thailand's engagement in, say, agriculture sector with some countries, but give due diligence to other efforts and bring out them as well. There might not be a detailed study of it, but Thailand's initiatives, say in the agriculture sector or in industrial capacity sector, they can be, inventorized and placed in one. And that's what I'm saying, that analyzing at the sectoral level would be far better than the broad effort.
I think I also agree on this idea, at the sectoral level and also, at the small scale. I think that is possible. Yeah. And as Antia raised, actually the ownership from the government is very, very important. I also would like to hear views from Thailand people. But before that, I go to Hari South first. Yeah.
Actually, I was just about to say that. It's one thing that we want, we all understand about the value of evaluation and impact analysis, for instance. It's one thing that we want to sort of try and promote this, and I think that's great. But I think it's another thing for governments to understand and sort of accept this whole idea as well. Now, in some countries, it is highly tied to the nature of how South-South cooperation programs are being organized, right? So if, let's say in Malaysia, the nature is that it is not super organized at the level of the technical cooperation itself, it is definitely going to impact the program. So what I'm saying is that when you evaluate the programs, you cannot run away from saying, you know what, there is a structural problem here. Because when the decision was made to get involved in funding or in training or whatever, there were processes that was not followed, upon. The thinking was probably not organized. And that is a totally separate thing than the program itself at the sectoral level. Of course, you are evaluating at the sectoral level, but it has connection. The failures, maybe if it fails, is not because of the program itself, but because how it was not thought of or organized, at the organizing level. So this is where it's going to impact governments, right? This is where it's going to get back to them and say, you know what? Actually, we have to relook into our structure. So now you are already crossing into areas where it can get quite messy and sensitive, right? So this is where I think we need to think very carefully, because there's a lot of work that we are doing, I think promotes that reorganization and that rethinking and reorganizing without having a report to tell them that you have to do this because you have performed badly. The approach now is a little bit different. The approach now is bringing them to think of why it's useful to move forward, not because you have to move forward because you have failed. You see, that's two separate approaches, right? So we have to be careful, because if we go by the latter approach, by saying that you have to reorganize because guys, you guys are just not organized enough, they might just be very. I don't know about Thailand, and other countries, but I think Malaysia, they're going to be quite defensive, and I'm not sure if you can promote changes, using that approach. However, at the same time, I'm not saying that evaluation and impact assessment, for instance, is not worthy. I think it's very good, and I think it's something that needs to be promoted. It's just that we really have to think very carefully on how to deal with this kind of reports if we do it.
This is the very, very important thing, because we work with government agency, not just only among academic. Yeah, this is also my concern. We go to you first, or we go to Thaiga? Anybody from Thaiga? Because we are partner. Yeah, Kun Vanjong, please.
Thank you, John Sipon. I would like to share with you the experiences that Thailand has implemented in terms of the M&E. We just worked with the UNDP Bangkok to have some like a basic manual. A few years ago, I working with the UNDP, and then we try to have their like a Thailand system of the evaluation. And then we just bring a team to have trial and errors on the handbook of the evaluation handbooks in Laos. And I think it still need to improve in terms of the more effective ways of the working. Actually, I am in charge directly in terms of evaluation and try to have more integrative and recently try to have the team to go to Laos, but it seems that Thaiga staff is quite busy. I'm not sure what they are doing, but whenever I call it, why don't we go to Laos? We select the project already, but almost 2 years I could not go there. And they keep informing me that they are too busy with the regular program. But in terms of the monitoring, I can say that the Thaiga has to report to the government quite often. In general, in overview of the monitoring, we have to report to the budget bureaus, the comptroller general that try to have what we have done in terms of the ODA program of Thai ODA program. So that and I myself also monitoring in terms of the program that Thaiga implement quarterly and then report to the department. What we are facing is, I think monitoring and evaluation is sometimes with what the problem I am facing is the problem we have is the design of the program. And design project is quite serious as well. I think we talking about M&E, we should talk about how we prepare the project or program. So far, I think Thaiga still need some improvement in terms of how we design the project or program. Like in neighboring countries, I think the project that we are preparing is quite simple. Sometimes too simple for me, and we need to to apply more systematics and try to introduce the result frameworks to see more. If you are looking for some of the impact assessment, I think we need to prepare up to the program-based approach rather than the project-based. That we try to have some of the program in Laos, I think Myanmar as well. And recently we are working with the German government in terms of the programming approach in triangular cooperation working in Laos. So I think talking about the M&E, maybe we need to see some improvement in terms of the architecture in terms of the project and program design. I want to talk a bit on in terms of the knowledge, know-how. I think the Japanese, they have the forum on the M&E for more than 10 years. I think it's still running. Running that one also one of the good example that can be a network for partner countries to share experiences. I think I joined that several times already. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Khun Panjong. Anybody from Thaiga again? I can turn back to Thaiga again later. Sachin, please.
Actually, I was trying to make precisely the same point. Response of the governments, I think, would depend on the level of domestic deliberations on these issues. So how open and how welcoming would be a government's response is directly a function of the extent to which this dialogue is taking place within the governments. CAG, the Comptroller Auditor General, parliamentary standing committees are some mechanisms which Pancham also mentioned, are some mechanisms which are already in place. So the moment you come up with, they would say, why do you want to do it? We have our own mechanisms, they are working well. What is it that you are bringing on the table? So I think the idea to start with the disaggregated approach assessment and then add value to it in terms of drawing the larger universe should be the effort.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else? Yes, Ajahn.
My name is from Chiang University. Speaking from practitioner point of view, we have been working under TICA for more than 10 years and working with the neighboring countries. And I think we, for the benefit of what we are doing, we also would like to see a kind of self-reflexive evaluation. We, as the one who carry out South-South collaboration, how do we understand the cultural aspect of cooperation? For example, between Thailand and Myanmar, Thailand and Cambodia, not only cultural but also economic and political aspects. How successful we have been doing, or what kind of mistake that we have learned, and also what will be the challenges for the future or for the next decades of collaboration, where we can see not only GMS but also the ASEAN and ASEAN with the coming of China into the region, and also India, for example. The framework that we did since 10 years ago, we focused on the GMS. But now we have to think about the external the influences and interests, and see how we can rethink about what we are doing. For example, the issue of human resource development, or what are the need for those southern countries that we should work with? Should we put more emphasis on environmental issues, poverty elimination, social inequality, or just focus on market and business and trade? So there's a need for rethink about this. Secondly, I think we cannot do this alone. We need to listen to our southern partner. And second, we also need to work with, for example, TICA or line agencies, so that we can come up with more comprehensive view. And I do agree with the previous speakers that we should aim to do a more specific small project or small module first before we can enlarge it.
Thank you, Kajan. I completely agree with many ideas raised here. I think we can start from the small scale and sectoral approach, result-based approach, review from what we have done, the success and the failure. And of course, we need partner also. I think maybe I put another way around, the recipient base. Maybe we would like to hear the view from recipient sides also. So far, we don't do that much. Yeah. Anything else that we would like to share in this forum again? I'm not sure from a government agency that there are people from other organizations also, not only TICA, right? I mean, if you would like to share your ideas, we would like to listen to it. Yes, please. Yes, okay, Antia.
Just since we're wrapping up, the role of the network at the outset might be to help create that enabling environment for different countries to actually do their own types of evaluation or just pick their programs. I mean, if the Asia Foundation were to facilitate something on a regional basis, what we could do is help facilitate a dialogue around evaluation between provider country, recipient country. It could just be a closed dialogue between the two partners, and they could agree on, what things do we want to look at? Why would we consider our partnership successful or not? It doesn't have to be made public, but if we could have an enabling environment for countries to engage in their own evaluation or monitoring, and put out different frameworks that could be used, some suggested indicators. And then later maybe different partners could come back together in a regional forum and say, we've tried this with this project or in this sector, here were the results, here were the responses from our recipient partners. And then there could be an evolution from there. I think people would be afraid to sort of admit what went wrong from the outset. And we have to be very cautious about that if you're involving governments. But maybe put methods, tools, facilitation in people's hands and provide a forum to share the results of that.
And here, I think this is very, practical to do, and also comfortable for partners to do too. Yeah, good idea. Anything else from other organizations that would like to share your experiences, your idea? Actually, we means I and Ajahn Pakuman, our team, we are from university, so we developed something, we proposed something from what we would like to study. And of course, we would like to work with a government agency. We realize that whatever we do, if you do not accept it, it's just useless. It will be something like a book on the shelf, and nothing will happen. So we would like to do something that will be good for our country, for the region, and it's also practical for all of us here, not just only for our ambitions just to write a book. Yeah. So we welcome your idea more, if possible.
Is that the reason you have to stay?
That's true. Yeah. Yes, Kun Manchong ka.
So I would like to share a bit on the network. And we try to do some on the networking as well in the past, like Chiang Mai University used to have some, just give example, when the network is start. We try to have university in the GMS, for example, group together and also the government office, and try to have, I could not remember exactly, around 10 or 15 university just the GMS. And they came from various fields, but try to sit and talk, try to put the agenda on a GMS agenda. That can be one of the good networking as well. But before we try to promote the networking, I think talking about South-South cooperation so far, what we are looking for is some kind of good or best practices. So I do recommend that even NIDC Bangkok, maybe first start in terms of what we should share in terms of the network is the knowledge. And I do suggest we go beyond the development cooperations, try to go farther than the technical cooperations. What do we need in many countries of the South is the practice in terms of the development effectiveness. So like in Thailand, I tried some of the program already in terms of the poverty reduction program, and we try to study, talking about poverty reduction in Thailand, what is the exactly model, success case or the failure case. So that can be a good example that we can encouraging the South countries to study, maybe by supporting by the other university or traditional donors. So if we can collect more in terms of the practices, and then before we start networking, that can be a good cases for learning among the South countries. And I think 3-4 years ago, I also joined the team of the task team on the South-South cooperation. That they start collecting, but at that time they just collecting the project of the technical cooperation project theory. So I think at the moment, I do recommend that we should collect some kind like development project. Many countries, they have their own experiences, and then they have the cases that we can share. So that can be a good start for South-South cooperation, and then that can be convincing for collaboration, for networking among South-South cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ka. Anything else? Any more ideas that we would like to share? No more. It seems that there is no more. So far as I take notes here, maybe the two important suggestions. First is that we can do something like, as Ajahn Chayan said, the self-reflection. And we can do the self-reflection by dialogue. Maybe the dialogue between Southern providers, some selected country, and the recipient, some selected country. And we go at the small scale, select some program, some project. And I think it will be good if we ask the partner to select both failure and success. And then we can learn from that. So this is one thing, one big suggestion. The second suggestion, actually this is from Sashi. I also, to some extent, agree with this one. Instead of putting M and E, maybe because we realize that we are different from the Northern providers, so we go for E and IA. So focus on result based. So we go for sectoral and result based. This is the way that we can work, and we will apply the same method, the dialogue. It can be the dialogue among the providers first, and the dialogue among between the providers, North and South, and South and South, and also the South and the recipient later. We can separate the dialogue, and or after several dialogues, and then we can have something like a big workshop later. That also can be done. This is two things. Big suggestion from the floor. I'm not sure whether there is anything else that you would like to suggest. And this is what we think that we will work closely with TICA, and also of course some line ministry that provide grant. Actually today we didn't talk about loan, because loan is another scheme, I think. Yeah, it's another scheme. Yes.
Farther than before. But I like the idea of about the like an organization from like Asia Foundation is the moderator for our dialogue. Because, for example, if I ask my recipient in Laos and Cambodia about what kind of problems they have with our program, the answer will say, well, no, because there is a kind of a certain Asian value, will not say negative response to, particularly to the providers.
Yes. Yes.
They don't want to lose the providers. So if there is a more private, closed door dialogue with someone else who is not third party moderator, then that can elicit more intimate information from both the donors and from those providers and recipients. I do have a lot of complaints about my South partner, but I maybe impolite to make it up, to make it official. So it would be a good idea to do that. So we need a more sophisticated methodology to deal with these South-South collaboration. And remember that here is not South Korea and Thailand, or South Korea and East Timor. but we are neighbors. Thailand, Malaysia, Thailand, Laos, and there's some historical and cultural background that sometimes we cannot speak the whole thing, about the whole fish.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
Yes, Sachin.
Yeah, just to your point, Sripon, about not taking the dimension of loan or lines of credit. And as I said in the morning, that different southern providers are at different levels of engagement. So I think we need to develop methodology which captures all the modalities. And there is a trend that I'm seeing with whatever study I have done, that more and more southern actors are using more and more modalities in one go. So growing convergence of modalities within South-South cooperation is a major trend that I'm seeing now. There are certain countries which have confined themselves to training programs alone, but there are countries which have gone far beyond that. And that's where larger chunk of development cooperation is coming in. And China is a beautiful example of this kind of convergence. India is far behind in that, but is there. There are many other actors. So I would suggest that when we do, we should do full justice with all the modalities. And second point is that institutions like NIDC now should be the new partners for Asia Foundation if at all this initiative takes off. Because NIDC represents another convergence of academic, civil society and TICA, or the government. Similarly, FIDC in India, when we do some work, we have a tripartite agreement on that work agenda. So NIDC, FIDC and different DCs from different countries, if these institutions spur up, they would provide de facto endorsement from the government. So we don't have to run back to the government, oh, we have come up with this, do you agree? So we would have their partnership right from the beginning, and that would be very important.
Yeah. I'm not sure. This is what you mean by MOU, no? Something like that. Is that?
Not really. What I'm saying is when we work in a new partnership mode, earlier in the Asian dialogue, we participated as individual researchers at the best representing our institutions.
Yeah.
But now this assessment business is something, as Ashwin rightly said, the government's agreement, their amenability to the idea is it's prerequisite to the success. So they being on the board through platforms like NIDC or back home FIDC is extremely important. So when we expand, we can encourage our partner institutions in other Asian countries to have similar setup, so that they are like Kitech is also thinking of floating a similar platform in China. So we can have those networks as partners in this new phase.
I'll keep these in mind. Actually, we have done several things like this with Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a whole, not with TICA. We have MOU, Thammasat University with Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Thammasat University with Thailand Research Fund. Yeah, we may think about this kind of thing. Yeah. I completely agree with you about the loan. Not only the loan issue, but I think the modalities and. The discussion about development cooperation, as Khun Banjong said, now it's go far beyond just only development cooperation, and modalities also go far beyond the traditional, the conventional one that we, discussed for a long time. I think last month we went to Australia together, my colleague and also Antia, and people even discussed what should we count as aid. Because there are a lot of issues that some countries say this is aid, it is not aid, and it is far beyond the conventional things that the northern providers say for a long time. So, this is a new trend that we have to catch up. Actually, I do not have much to conclude because we already talked a lot today. I would like to say Just only 2 sentences. First, we have learned a lot from each other as the people of the same hemisphere, the South. And the second one, the second sentence, I'm sure that the knowledge that I learned today and all of us learned today will bring us to the new bright future of cooperation together. Thank you everybody for coming to join the session, particularly all of our colleagues from far away, India, Malaysia, Indonesia. Also our partner from the ministry, my colleagues from the university, my student and my staff who joined this one. We hope that we will have the workshop again. Actually, we plan to have it next 3 months from now on. So by that time, we would like to invite more Southern providers, including China and Brazil if possible. And we will welcome all of you again in the next 3 months. Thank you, everybody. Now you have free time. I mean, for the people who are still here in Bangkok, according to your right, you still can have, you can use your room until you leave Bangkok. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, tea and coffee is outside again. Yeah, so you please take tea and coffee. Thank you.
You're going to Mexico. Oh, thank you. Yeah, could we just talk about you? I meet you there. So how many of you are from India?
Here?
No, into Mexico.
Mexico, no, very few.
Nobody.
Very one
Very
or two.
few.
One or two.
From the government?
From the government at a lower level. Not high.
So nice to meet you. Thank you very much.ได้ไหมจิตใจเก็บไว้แล้วไว้แชร์เพราะเดี๋ยวพี่ไปเซฟว่าของไม่มันไปไม่ได้ไม่อยากให้คนไปยังไม่ถูกจริงเราไม่ค่อยเรียนนะเวลาเราออกโฟกัสเราที่เดียวคือมันดีแบบเราไม่ได้ใช้เช่นที่มีออฟเฟสเราไม่ใช้ที่เราใช้กันทั่วโลกเราเป็นอย่างเราอยาก นี่ไม่สิ่งแบบนี้ของเราไม่เด็คุยให้คุยก็ออกมาแต่ถ้าคุณจะเจอคนการออกมา
ฟิวกันเลย
แสดงว่าจริงๆแล้วเนี่ยมีล็อกเวนเป็นไกด์ไลน์ไม่ใช่ไกด์ไลน์นี้ก็การที่ท่านใหญ่กว่าโปรเจกต์เป็นตัวใหญ่โปรแกรมก็จะใหญ่โปรเจกต์คือใช้ว่าหนึ่งโปรแกรมเราไม่สองรูปตรงนี้มันจะมีเวลาที่เขาใช้ตัวแบบนี้เพราะว่าเริ่มทำโปรเจกต์เดียวไม่รวมทำโปรแกรมต้องดูว่า Yes, yes. Backlight. เราออกแบบแฟลชไลท์มันไม่ถูกเนี่ยไม่เก่งไอ้การวิจัยจะช่วยปรับปรุงกระบวนการ
Parkin said that there is
ซึ่งเวลาใช้ตาที่ยืนหนอก็ใช้บริการคือหมายว่าความใจอย่าจิ้มโยงกับเรื่องที่เป็นเรื่องของความรู้ข้อมูล
I was thinking of dropping this in my room, but then I think I can carry it and make many parts of the beauty. Huh?
You still have your room, so that's good.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Get your money.
เช่นตัวอย่างนะพูดลอยๆนะพูดใช้ลายเช่นด้านการหาความร่วมมือ
Okay, see you then.
ทุกคนต้องรู้โจทย์เดียวกันแล้วนะแต่นี่ประชุมทีมเป็นการเป็นตัวเบอร์นี้จะเป็น
Yeah, I understand a little bit, but yes. It's okay. It's okay.
ดูถึงว่ามันมีอะไรอย่างเช่น
It's okay. It's learning. Yes, I understand, but I was not sure how to reply. So, yeah, I did my best. Okay.
เป็นรูปถ่ายเลยเราเป็นคนเราเป็นคนใช่เราเป็นรูปเลยทีนี้ว่าไม่โอเคแล้วก็หาตัวเช่นเขาไปดูที่ความช่วยเหลือครับคือบอลเป็นคนที่มีว่าไปหัวหางก็ที่ศึกษาดูอาจจะใช้เซกเตอร์ก่อนนะหรือว่าถ้าคุณถ้าต้องการสเกลใหญ่มากกว่าขายยาวโดนแน่มาซึ่งมันดีฟอลต์คุณสามารถดีเขียนได้เลยว่าโหดีฟอลต์เขาลงการเสร็จฟรีมีประมาณ200 ล้านอยู่ใช่ไหมเอาพูดกันที่ดีให้คุณมีเปเปอร์คุณเอาไปก่อนจะได้ดีคุณการต่อบัตรดูแลที่เรื่องการจ่ายสารโดยที่ต้องโจทย์ตรงนี้ที่ดูบ่อยที่ดู น้องสาวSI น้องสาวอยู่ที่แคนาดาเขาเป็นที่อยู่ที่ลงจดไปคือพวกนี้มันโทรมาหาผมแล้วก็ผมเจอเขาในฟอรัมทั้งหลายเยอะแยะอย่างชาจีเนี่ยก็คือ research and information ที่เชื่อไปไหนเนี่ยคือเขาเป็นช่างทั่วโลกแต่แล้วเขาก็เรียนรู้ของเรื่องที่เวลาเขาชุมนุมต้องเจอ
Thank you.
ที่อยากเป็นเราเจเนอเรลแล้วก็มีเกียรติในหลายสาย
You should be part of this global network.
ผมว่าเดี๋ยวคุณเข้าไปก็ดูว่าเขาบอกเรื่องอะไรในเซอร์วิส
Yes.
Not
Yes.
south.
They have arranged. 7 o'clock. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. See you.
เอานะคะตอนทุ่มยืนยันตอนทุ่มหนึ่งยืนยันค่ะขอบคุณนะคะ
เดี๋ยวจะเห็นนี่ก็มันก็เดี๋ยวเป็นของยุโรปแต่ว่าคนแอคทีฟที่มีที่เป็นฟิลิปปินส์เจอทุกเซสชั่นเลยที่บาร์ที่คุณสอนไปดีเซนเขาดูข้อมูลไอ้คนที่ประชุมปี2050เนี่ยเขาก็ไปศึกษาเนี่ยตั้งเรื่องศึกษาคุณศึกษาอยู่ที่ไหนแน่นอนแต่ตอนนี้ใส่ตอนที่คุณทำเองยึดถือเองคุณก็เริ่มศึกษาไปลองดูชุดเสียงดูชุดผู้เรียนอย่างเช่นJS มันยังไงก็ทำคืออะไรแต่ว่ามันเคยมีคนดูไปแล้วมันมีทั้งกี่โครงการเนี่ยแต่ละโครงการมันเนี่ยงานใหญ่ต้องมีความสำคัญจะเป็นอยู่เล็กอยู่มันอาจจะมีคนทำคุณไปทำต่อยอดหรือว่าทางที่ผมพูดเวลาที่เราไม่ดูเลยโครงการฝากถึงสาวๆแบบเราเรียกว่าที่ดูเลยความสำเร็จในการที่จะทำการพัฒนา50 ปีครับสวัสดีครับคุณไปศึกษาแล้วนี่เป็นโจทย์ที่เรารู้เลยว่าเราจะสิ่งต่างช่วงที่ต่างเราเลยนะครับไทยคนไทยที่ฝรั่งที่ไม่รู้เขาดูให้ไปทุกเรื่องที่ทำเร่งทุกโครงการพอดีของสิ่งที่เกี่ยวกับความรู้จะเป็นตัวเดียวกันได้ต้องผมไม่ลงแล้วหยิบไป
นับแล้วนี่ค่ะท่านที่อยู่โรงแรมนั่นแหละใช่เอาไปหรือเปล่ามันโต๊ะไหนบ้างคะ
ตรงนู้นเนี่ยในจีนนะครับตรงนี้พอเห็นพอ
โต๊ะนี้
น่าจะเป็นนักศึกษา
สาวเปล่าไอเด็กสองคนนี้เนี่ยค่ะลูกชายเปล่า
นะครับนี่ก็จะใส่ของ
ก็คือดูมันว่าคือถ้าเป็น
นั่งตรงนี้
ถ้าเป็นเดลิเวอรี่ตัวบริษัท
ถามเด็กที่เด็กยังอยู่
ครับ
แต่ถ้าเป็นพวก
ที่จะเป็นเรื่องของเด็ก
นั่งเป็นเราคนเรา
คือเรา
แต่ในเราพูดอย่างนี้สุดท้ายเป็น
เราเสียไม่ดีว่าที่ประเทศประเทศมันเก่ง
ก็ดูกันตั้งแต่กลางวันแล้วไม่จะไม่นับกลางวันคือเขาเล่นของ
เราอาจจะมีโครงการ
ใช่
ส่งเสริม
เราขโมยดี
การ
ได้
ขึ้นออกแกนิก
ตามนั้นบุญอะไรกัน
ที่ประโยชน์เด็กนะต้องไปดู
ไม่ตามเราก็ต้องเสียเงินให้แหละ มีอยู่เท่านั้นอ่ะ
ครับ
กลายเป็นค่าดินสอเราแพงมาก
ง่ายการ
ตามยากด้วยสิ
พูดง่ายว่า เรื่องที่มันดีแล้วจะเป็นเฟสที่2ของตอนเราที่เกิดวันนี้เหมือนที่บัวแบบบอกครับแล้วก็เสร็จมาแล้วสมมติเรารู้แล้วที่อยากเรียนรู้ที่เรียนถ้าอยากเรียนรู้ที่ขั้นแรกอาจจะเป็นของการ
3 อัน 9,500
แล้วช่วงที่เขาเอาพื้นที่มาเสริมในแถวนั้นเขาไม่ได้เสริมไอ้นี่ด้วย
นับ 35 ไม่เกี่ยวกัน เพราะว่าเริ่มต้นที่35ไม่ได้ใช้ถูกต้องหรือจาก 35
แต่ว่าเขาต้องเสริมเสริมนี้
ไม่นะแต่เก้าอี้ก็ได้คืออย่างนี้เก้าอี้เอาอย่างนี้
ตรงนี้ถูกค่ะแต่มีเรื่องที่พี่นะหนูว่าประมาณ
ไม่พี่เข้าใจแล้วแต่ว่าเดิมแต่ขอไว้ที่35เราไว้35ฉะนั้น
อันนี้สามารถเป็นที่เรียนรู้
ไม่ได้นับอะไรนับ
ซึ่งมันอาจจะเป็นเรื่องของการเป็นเรื่องเดียวที่
ส่วนไอ้เก้าอี้ไม่เกี่ยวได้ไหมเราก็นับจากที่
ถ้าเราไม่ศึกษาเราไม่รู้หรอกว่ามีอะไรซ่อนอยู่ทั่วไปก็ไม่รู้ว่า
อันนี้น่าจะเป็นเป็นเฟส 2แต่เฟสแรกยังไม่เห็นว่าเงินที่มันสั่งใน GMS เนี่ยหรือว่าในอินโดนีเซีย
ตอนนี้เราต้องตามมา
จะได้ดูว่าเวลาเอเชีย
เราใส่คอไว้ครับอาจารย์ที่ว่าเขาซูนเนี่ย
เป็น
แต่เป็นวันแล้วหลังเก็บของมีการเก็บของเอกสารเลย
เหมือนเพราะว่าเอกสารเราใส่แฟ้มได้ไงเหมือนแบบพอวางซ้อนกันปุ๊บก็ไปเลย
ใส่ของเลย
3 แผ่นได้แล้วแล้วเราก็ต้องจ่ายอีกใช่ไหมนี่เมื่อกี้ไม่
ที่มีก็จะมีซี
ไม่ต้องเชื่อเลย
จีได้พูดการที่อีกบ้านแต่ที่มันเป็นข้อมูลรวมที่ใส่ขอ
ของโรงแรมนั่นแหละที่ต่างกันเขาบอกมุมนั้นเนี่ยมุมนู้นมุม